All right, it's 8:01, so let's get rolling here. All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great Monday. We have a couple new classes joining us for the Hangout, so I'd just like to reintroduce myself. I'm Chuck. I'm your coach. I try to do the Hangouts once every week. It'll be an invite. Usually I'll post it on Sunday, and you can reply with questions. And whatever questions are asked, I try to answer them as best as I can. Try to do some research beforehand. So the earlier you submit the questions, the more time and thought I can kind of put into the answers. So I'm going to go ahead and get started right into the questions since we have a ton this week. If you've watched a Hangout before, you'll notice I'm standing as opposed to sitting. There is a specific reason for that, and I will get to that during the course of the first question. So our first question comes from Wayne, who asks, how do you deal with a sedentary job? Any strategies or things you do during the day, or do you just work a little harder in your workouts? First, thank you for the question, Wayne. That's actually a really great question. This applies to me even now, since every day I'm usually sitting from 6:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. or longer every night, and it's awful. That's one of those things I'm trying to fix. So the first thing I do is that while I'm sitting at my desk in my office, I try to maintain good posture. I don't use the armrests on my chair. I try to sit with my chest up, keep my back arched, and my butt kind of sticking out in a chair. You kind of have to get used to holding that position, and if you have a weaker core or you're not used to it, it's going to hurt your abs a little bit. But once you kind of are used to bracing that, it'll be a little bit easier, and it'll take some pressure off of your hips in doing so. So the reason I do this is because I used to slouch in my chair, put my arms up on the armrests, and sometime last year I started getting a numbness in my hands. And when that happened, I went to my physical therapist thinking I was getting carpal tunnel from typing so much. Thankfully, it was just some nerve entrapment due to my bad posture and bad typing habits. And it was fixable without any permanent damage being done, thankfully. So beyond that, a couple other things you can do. Try to get in the habit of getting up from your chair at least once an hour and taking a good 5-minute stroll. This is harder for me than it sounds because sometimes I'm just too much in the zone. Time passes so quickly. I'll look at the clock and it's been 2 hours and my entire body except for my hands haven't moved for 2 hours. So I'm trying to work into ways to better do that. Maybe like set an alarm or an Outlook reminder or something like that to just say, hey, get up and walk around for a little bit. Normally I would go out for a walk on lunch, but I'm in Pittsburgh and it's been so cold that this has been a lot more difficult. And I've been busier than normal. So I'm not normally adverse to the cold, but with the wind chill, it's been like negative 15 degrees here on my lunch recently. So I've just been working through my lunches and eating at my desk, which normally I'd go walk around and eat when I came back, but I haven't been doing that. Some other things is I would try to do some stretches at my desk, and that's specific stretches for my neck, my shoulders, my hands. Basic stuff like just kind of stretching your neck out, moving your neck around, doing shoulder rolls, that type of thing can kind of undo some of the bad things you're doing by sitting all day with your shoulders, ready to type. When I do go for a walk, if no one else is around, I'll do something like body weight squats or body weight Romanian deadlifts. Body weight Romanian deadlift is essentially you would just kind of stick your butt out, arch your back, and lean your butt back as far as you can, or things like trying to touch my toes just to get some movement in there. Some other behavioral things you could do would be like anytime you get a phone call or you're calling someone, stand up. That way, that way you're not just constantly sitting the whole time. I used to work in a call center, and I did that out of subconsciously used to do that. I used to just stand up and walk around and move around. Now that my job doesn't require me to be on the phone, I find myself just doing that less and less, but I'm trying to get it back into that habit myself. Some other things would just be to increase the amount of activity you have with minor things. That's like parking further away on purpose, always taking the stairs instead of the elevator. The building I work in doesn't even have an elevator, so I have to take the stairs, so that's kind of built in. But, even if you're going for a walk and you have stairs, once an hour, go up and down a couple flights of stairs. Those things, they're not major. They can help you a little bit to loosen up what's being tight by sitting so long. So it's like usually when you're sitting for so long, it's going to be your shoulders are going to be tight, your hamstrings, your glute or your butt. And then there's the IT band, which kind of runs across your hip bone down into your leg. And that's what really gets me. My right one is really, really tight. So some of the other things you can try but haven't been an option for me would be converting to a standing desk or sitting on something like a Bosu ball instead of a regular chair. There's also chairs that are like kneeling chairs, which is almost like kneeling at church, if that applies to you. Like I said, the office I work in, those are not an option. So like I mentioned before, I'm standing for the Hangouts. I've never done that before. So in writing the reply to this question, I figured, hey, you know what? Perfect opportunity to try standing for the entire Hangout and see how that works. I do find that I'm fidgeting a little bit more as I'm standing here, but that's okay. If you're going to be standing for any length of time, you're going to want to get something called an anti-fatigue mat. You'll normally see them marketed to people with standing desks or for the kitchen. I was just at Sam's Club and Costco both over the weekend, and they both had anti-fatigue mats for the kitchen because if you're standing in the kitchen and chopping food and preparing food, you're going to be standing. You don't want your feet to hurt. So they sell them pretty much everywhere. You can get a kitchen one or a standing desk one. It doesn't really matter. Just as long as if you're going to be standing for extended periods of time, you can use an anti-fatigue mat. One of my clients actually has a treadmill desk. So as he works, he is on the treadmill all day long. That's pretty intense. He's a braver man than I. I don't think I'd be able to do that. I probably would stop paying attention to walking on the treadmill, fall, and roll off the treadmill. That's what happened to me. So, but in my home office, I am considering converting it to a standing desk. Right now, I have a laundry basket on my dining room table for the Hangout. That's not going to work when actually needing to type a lot. So I'm trying to figure out some ideas, because coaching is pretty sedentary too. In regard to how I approach this from a workout angle, there's two primary things I do. I believe I've mentioned before, but I like to do stationary cycling. And what I'll do is when I'm stationary cycling, I'll really sit back on the seat and kind of lean forward so that when I'm pedaling, I'm pushing into my hips to try to loosen my hips up. And as far as the actual workouts themselves, I will try to do extended warm-ups for the body parts that are tighter from having saddle day. So anything that includes the hips or the IT band, that's going to be the squats, specifically squats, for me at least. I know before my IT band was tight one time and I was in a hurry, wasn't having a great day. I just kind of wanted to get through my workout and I didn't stretch out and I hurt my back because of it. So a lot of times when it comes to the human body, what you end up hurting or what hurts is not what's actually the problem. So my tight IT band caused my back to hurt. So what I'll do is for squats, I'll do like 3 or 4 sets of 10 just with the bar. And on the last rep of each set, I'll just sit in the bottom position and kind of rock back and forth onto my hips to kind of loosen them up. And then sometimes I'll just sit at the bottom position of the squat and just hold it for a couple seconds before actually starting my warm-up, which are usually like a percentage of my working weight. So just the additional warm-up sets for squats. I begrudgingly came to that conclusion that squats were getting harder for me, but it was because I was so tight from sitting all day. Becoming a coach, I'm actually sitting more now. So that's one of the dangers in coaching others is that sometimes your own fitness kind of starts to go into the back burner, and my additional warm-up sets are kind of a fix for that in regard for me. And now standing during the Hangout too. I'm going to see if this goes well enough for me to do it again standing. So one specific stretch you can do for the hips is called a couch stretch. The first Google result should bring you to Mobility WOD. It's a really great website for mobility. The thing with mobility is there are so many different different stretches you can do, different routines you can do, that if you end up doing all of them, it'll be your entire day. So I would say if you're going to start looking into a mobility routine, look at ones that are specific to an issue you're actually having. So if you sit all day, the couch stretch, Google it. It's really good. Essentially, you're putting one leg, like the shin of your leg, up on a wall, and you're putting the other leg forward like a lunge, and you're stretching out your hip that way, and it's brutal. You don't even need to do it every day, but the instructions are there. If you have questions, we can talk about that. But that should really help open your hips up, which will be tight from sitting all day. Lastly, I've brought these into the Hangouts before, but I'm going to do it again. So other than all those things I mentioned, you can just do some stretches, but things like foam rolling, Regular foam roller didn't cut it for me, so I use the stick, which is basically just a flexible kind of roller. And this lets you kind of pinpoint a specific part of your body that you want to release tension from. You can really, it's almost like a bread roller. You can kind of get in there because it's segmented. You can really pinpoint little tiny spots. For me, it's the IT band, like I said, and that's the band that kind of runs over the hip. I can just really get in there and dig. It's called the stick. And then this is a Theracane. It looks like a really weird contraption, wizard cane or something. And it really is a wizard cane. You can pretty much target any spot on your body. Like you can go and get your back if your back is tight without asking someone to massage you. And these different points can kind of just hit the different spots in your body. And these are really hard plastic, so you can really dig in there. And it's pretty painful, but afterwards it feels really good. Like I said, you don't need to immediately start buying all this crap thinking you have a problem. This is me specifically addressing specific issues that I've had over the years, and my wife too, because I think I've mentioned it before, she throws in the Highland Games more frequently than I do. And so this is kind of stuff that we pack with our travel gear just to kind of loosen up before and after the games. All right, so the bad news is with all of that stretching and warm-up sets, et cetera, we are really just fighting the tide. So the real answer here is we need to sit less. So I've come to the realization it really only matters to reduce the amount of sitting however you can. It's kind of a losing battle if you're not also doing that in addition to the things I've mentioned. So anything you can do to reduce the actual amount of time spent sitting will be of great benefit to you. So if you're interested in a standing desk, Lifehacker, the website lifehacker.com, has a great article titled The Complete Guide to Choosing or Building the Perfect Standing Desk. I have the showcase turned on in the Hangout. It should be on the right-hand side. And that actually shows three things. So it's going to show a link to the YouTube channel where all of the previous Hangouts are. It's going to show a link to my Google Plus page. And at the very bottom, there should be a link to that article on Lifehacker. If that's not working for some reason, let me know. I can send it out. But really, it's just lifehacker.com, the complete guide to choosing or building the perfect standing desk. And that should be get you started. It goes into how you can buy one or build one or use an IKEA hack to combine different things at IKEA to make your own standing desk. Once I'm able to kind of spare up some free time, I plan on doing that soon if possible. So, all right. So that was a really long, lengthy explanation there. If you're watching the Hangout live and you've never watched one before, the Hangouts should be immediately available to watch at any time afterwards. So you're not stuck only watching it live. So if you want to review anything I've said or ask me any questions, please do. All right, now that was a big mouthful. All right, on to the second question. And that question comes from Danny. Danny says that she's been drinking 2 to 3 cups of green tea a day and has been trying to drink it with every meal and before bed. She wanted to know what's so special about green tea and is it important for fat loss? Does it speed up your metabolism or does it keep you hydrated for longer? So this is a great question. When it comes to fat loss, anything that's legal and non-prescription is really only going to give you a tiny, minuscule edge over actually just calories and protein. You could pretty much avoid any supplementary things like that and still have great and lasting fat loss success. It's not required. So green tea specifically does not have anything specific to fat burning. It's a source of caffeine, and caffeine can increase your metabolism specifically, but that's the only mechanism in green tea that does that. So if you're drinking green tea solely for fat loss, it's doing the same thing as any caffeinated beverage, be it coffee, diet Mountain Dew, anything like that, any caffeinated beverage. One way to look at it is if all the efforts you're putting into fat loss made up a circle, 95% of that's going to be calorie intake. Protein intake is probably going to be 4% of that, and 1% of that's probably going to be everything else combined, including caffeine. The nutrition aspect is so vital to this. You know, I left out exercise, but it's in there somewhere. Just calories matter the most, and like everything else is so tiny in comparison that it's really not worth worrying about. But green tea has some other benefits to it that make it not so easily dismissed. It has bioactive compounds that are antioxidants, so that those are said to reduce cancer risk. It also has amino acids that can help you with brain function. So it's like said to like help against Alzheimer's, keep you fresh. Uh, I've found, this is anecdotally, I don't have any evidence for this, green tea makes me less hungry if I'm really hungry. So in conclusion, I would say that green tea is a great choice for a healthful drink, but it's not doing anything special or different for fat burning or fat loss compared to any other drinks that contain caffeine. I'm not drinking caffeine currently right now. I think I might get 5 or 10 milligrams of caffeine a day from decaf tea. It's not green tea. But what I would used to do when I wanted to scale back my caffeine a little bit would I drink my coffee first and then switch to green tea for the remainder of the day. So I'm not currently drinking any green tea, just decaf black tea. All right, so on to the next question. Danny asks, how important is water when it comes to losing weight? She was concerned that drinking more water would make you hold on to more water weight, but also heard that the more you drink, the more your body is taking in and your body will let go of water weight. So being adequately hydrated is important for fat loss and health in general. Much like anything, though, there are negatives to having too much water and too little water. So it's important to note that most of the food you're eating, or I would hope that you're eating when you're trying to fit in more healthful foods, contain a lot of water. So your body needs a certain amount of water for both a minimum level and then like an optimum level. So you may have seen like instructions or blog posts, or your doctor might say you should be taking in this much water every day, like 120 ounces or something. All of the data that that's based on is including the water or fluid you're taking in from the food too. So it's not hard to overdo the water. Let's address the water retention. I'll get to that in a second. The water retention thing is true. So when you take in more water and you don't change anything else, and by anything else, I mean if you don't change the amount of carbs you're eating regularly, if you don't change your salt or potassium or magnesium intake, and the only change is the amount of water you're drinking, your body will flush water out of you, as opposed to causing you to store more of it. Now, if you are eating additional carbs with that water, your body will say, here's some new carbs, here's some water, let's combine them and store them in the muscles. So you will gain water weight if you increase your carbs and or your sodium or potassium or magnesium. Those are your electrolytes. However, this isn't something you kind of really want to casually play around with. This is water manipulation, and it can be pretty dangerous. I'd recommend you not messing around with this. Just drinking enough water till you're not thirsty and be done with it. It's really not worth worrying about. There are two groups of people that manipulate their water weight for specific reasons, and that's like competition athletes, like wrestlers, powerlifters, etc., and bodybuilders. There are awful side effects for doing that. You're going to basically be cycling through dehydration. You're going to be dehydrated, and you're basically going to overcompensation, and that's where you start to feel side effects on both ends. I wrote about the side effects of consuming too much water in an article on my website, which is My Only Fat Loss Regret. It's on my blog if you want to check it out. It's chuckgrossfitness.com. I suffered from this. That's why I wrote about it. The reason I wrote about it is because all along for my fat loss, I would hear drink more water was the solution to every single problem. So I got to the point where I was drinking so much water because I was hungry, I was tired, and every single thing you read basically tells you that drinking more water solves those problems. So what ended up happening was I was dizzy when I stood up. I was cold all the time, even in the summer. I was peeing like 3 or 4 times an hour, including in the middle of the night. It was ruining my sleep quality. And I really thought something was wrong with me, so much so that I went to my regular doctor. They referred me to an endocrinologist to do like a endocrine panel to see like what was going on in my head, like my brain, actually, not like my head, but like, was there something wrong with my pituitary gland, that type of stuff. And the solution was that there's nothing wrong with me in regard to that. All the tests came back fine. So what I ended up doing was drinking less water and putting some more salt on my food, because that was kind of during the phase where I was trying to eat less salt. So the result of that was I was experiencing a mild form of water intoxication. And that's basically what happens is you're over consuming water, you're eating a lot of foods that contain water, and you're not getting a lot of salt. What happens is all that water you're taking in, when it flushes out, we talked about if you drink a lot of water, the water you store will be flushed out. By drinking so much more water and lowering my electrolytes, what I had stored electrolyte-wise was being flushed out also. So that fixed that for me by lowering my water intake to what I'd say a normal level is, meaning I drink when I'm thirsty. I try to not have a drink right before bed, but I'll have some foods that contain water in my evening snack. And I don't have that problem anymore. I think, I'm 34. Maybe you get up to go to the bathroom once a night, if that. And I'd say that's pretty normal for me. Now, anyways, like I said before, 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night was just awful. So the thing of this is there's not really any great way to say exactly how much you are going to need water-wise. But being hydrated is vitally important to your health, your fat loss, your well-being, your mental well-being, everything. You kind of just have to play it by ear. When you're thirsty, drink. It's important to not be dehydrated, but it's also important to not be overhydrated because on both ends of that spectrum, you're going to get the side effects like I mentioned. So it is possible to drink too much, and I've been there. I've paid the price for that, and now I know better. So it's really just going to take some playing by ear, but I wouldn't try to drink more water to flush out water weight. That water weight, unless you're at the point where your clothes are not fitting and you're feeling awful, bloated all over, you might want to drink a little bit more water then, but you don't want to go crazy. You don't need to drink like 4 gallons of water a day. I've seen people do that. I've seen friends long time ago, they were into fitness and they would carry around like a milk jug of water and they'd just be chugging water all day long. So I'm going to say that's not really worth it and really not worth your time unless you have a specific problem to address. So, and then again, you could run afoul of the symptoms of being overhydrated. All right. On to the next question. Danny asks, should I wear a brace while working out or just after working out? Will wearing a brace during workouts make that body part more vulnerable over time? I would say you don't need to wear a brace at all unless you have a specific problem or a past injury that would require the use of a brace or a sleeve. Normally those things help with compression, which just keeps the muscle tight during the workout and can kind of relieve some symptoms of like a nagging pain. The exception to this would be like if you're a competing powerlifter or you have an injury where you're being asked by your doctor to wear one, but that's kind of beyond my area of knowledge. I have some lingering shoulder, elbow, and knee problems, but I don't wear braces or wraps. So for example, I love chin-ups since I'm able to do them now. For 28 years, I could never do one chin-up. Now I can do a bunch. Chin-ups really aggravate my elbows, and I don't think it's anything with my form. I think it's just the way my body's built, the length of the limbs or whatever is just not a great position for my elbows, and it causes tons of pain around my elbows. I probably could have argued that was a case where I could have gotten a brace or elbow sleeves. Instead, I just changed to a variation of the chin-up that doesn't bother my elbows. I don't want to be the guy that's, in order to work out, I need to have a sleeve on every single joint and special suit and all that jazz. But like I said, if you have a specific issue or a doctor's recommending you wear one, that's fine too. But you don't need to automatically assume you're going to need a brace on every joint and sleeves and wraps and all that stuff. When you're kind of just getting started, you don't need all this equipment. It's only to address a specific problem. One thing I do use is Under Armour compression gear. I have a compression shirt, compression underwear, and I have compression pants, which are basically like yoga pants for guys. They don't offer anywhere near the level of compression that a sleeve or brace would, but they're just form-fitting tight. They keep everything in place when you're working out. And once you're warmed up, they'll kind of keep your joints warmed up so you don't have to kind of constantly be trying to keep them warmed up when you're working out. So I could say that those might be helpful for workout gear. All right, on to the last question submitted so far. Danny asks, how important is it to ice certain body parts after a workout? Well, you don't really need to ice anything after a workout unless you have a specific problem going on, like something that really hurts or feels inflamed. I know some athletes take ice baths after their workouts. Those are the type of athletes that are working out multiple times a day on top of their sports specific practices. So they're really going to need an edge in recovering to be able to do it again the next day. In general, you want to use ice when you're having any specific pain or inflammation. So if you're just sore, regular sore after working out, it's not necessary, but it's not going to hurt anything. You probably don't need to, but you could kind of save the ice for when you really need it. But that said, there aren't really any negatives to using ice on body parts after every workout. It might help you recover faster, but it'll probably make you colder, especially in this winter. I can't say I'd specifically recommend it, but I don't think that I'm aware of there's any harm in it. So if you want to try it, go for it. All right. I think that's all the submitted questions. Let me just kind of flip around here and see. All right. Let's see here. No, that looks like it. All right. So we will do another hangout next week, probably the same time. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can save them until the thread goes up. I'll usually post the threads on Sunday mornings with the hangout time. You can just reply to there and I'll cover them then. And I'll talk to everyone soon. Have a great night and a good week. Bye-bye.